Welcome to Synergy Bonus. Today we're going to be talking about something very close to all of our hearts, Dungeons and Dragons. Some of you may have heard of this obscure little game.
Satan's Game!
Really?
Satanic Panic!
Right into that?
Right into that.
Straight into
God damn it, if we had said about discussing this before I came over, I would have grabbed my copy of Satanic Panic. I have it from a sociology class.
Remember that for next time.
Right.
When we go into one of the older editions.
So as we're talking about Satan's Game here...
Pretty sure Satan's Game is poker, or no?
No, Satan's Game is hooker skating.
No, you're thinking of Grand Theft Auto.
No, I was talking about literally hooker skating.
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons. D&D.
Indeed. The brainchild of Gary Gygax and Dave Anderson in 1974.
It's older than us. That's
We found one.
saying something.
A derivative of the miniature war game using miniatures, chainmail, focusing more specifically on individual characters to tell stories.
Yeah, D&D is basically that, a storytelling game.
There are a lot of people who will get mad at us for saying that, but that is what it is.
Oh, those storytellers can go and sulk and clutch their D10s.
Those aren't the ones I was referring to.
Okay.
But it's a storytelling game, it's a dungeon crawl, it's math. It's math. It's a lot.
It is a lot. It is paying, what, $60 for books to teach you a different set of math.
So this is
as a friend of mine once put it.
This is D&D 3.5, and at the time, this book was $29.95. So
they've gotten more expensive.
Actually, 29, 3 books because you need Dungeon Master, Monster Manual, and Player Guides. That's $90 for a different set of math skills involving percentages.
And calculating odds.
Yeah. It's an expensive hobby, too.
Calculating odds, we're throwing dice. This is a lot like gambling, guys.
Kind
of.
With imaginary characters on paper.
They're as real as you make them, Doug.
It's true. It's true. I've had Mont Blanc. Oh my God.
The Magnificent Toma.
And the Magnificent Toma. I mean, these are some well-rounded characters.
One of the best parts about Dungeons and Dragons, reminiscing about your old characters around the table with other players and your old war stories. Yeah, your old war stories. Some of their deaths, death by squad of squirrels.
That was different game.
Different system.
Death by the tree crane, dual wielding, 4 blunderby, and shooting you point blank. Because the enemy had magic armor, blur, and he shot right through him.
Is it blunderby or blunderbuses?
Both are acceptable words.
Blunderbuses.
They're both perfectly crummy words.
I think blunderby. It sounds. I like the way blunderby sounds. It's like just do.
It drives another one of our friends crazy, which is why I say it.
It's true. Part of the fun of D&D is just getting around the table with your buddies and literally rolling some dice and just
busting each other's balls. For the most
pretty
part.
much.
And as the GM, just whatever
GM
bad
gray
shit
hair.
crazy thing they just came up with, like, you could have just done this. No, you came up with a 5-point plan to go around this the most back-assward way.
Most player characters overthink what's presented to them.
I've got this entire plan that you would talk about looking into this vault and these coat of arms and all that, but you're going to focus on the rusted old sword you pulled off the corpse.
Hey, here's this little, like, explanative story, like, verse for you to figure out the dungeon. And then here's the actual stuff that matches up to it. Instead of actually figuring out the puzzle...
We're going to take a battering ram to the wall!
Instead of figuring out the puzzle with the thing I explained to you.
Good times.
But it works.
Good time.
Yeah, it did. The next time I won't.
And then we'll come up with something equally ridiculous.
Yes.
As is the magic of Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes. And
whatever edition you may be playing.
What other type of game setting can you have a tiny spectral mammoth breathing, not even breathing fire, just spitting oil on people so we can set them on fire?
Shadowrun.
But yeah, that is another tabletop setting.
Conan.
Tabletop setting?
You could probably do it in Mage.
Probably could too.
Yeah.
Okay, so tabletop games, you can have tiny mammoths spitting oil.
In what other game system can you have a Dementor-Louisian tart being carried out on a plate by a Dementor-Louisian tart?
Ravenloft. Only Ravenloft.
Despite being a pocket domain, the Dread Domains do exist within the greater Planescape, so...
They're technically on the Umbral plane.
Yeah. So there is the potential, if you have a very forgiving and allowing and permissive Dungeon Master, that they could escape to any of the other. You could have a Dementor-Louisian tart and GREYHAWK. It's unlikely, but it's
very
possible.
The Dark Powers do not like to lose their playthings.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. And aside from, the ridiculous stories, just other ridiculous things happen, like peacocks, for example. It has now become a running thing, just peacocks.
I don't even remember where the peacocks started.
It started in Ravenloft.
Because we were in that party, and they had a peacock.
They were serving
I
peacock.
think it started before the party.
No. They were serving peacock, and I actually you know what? This is going to be a great torture device for someone. So I'm like, I'm going to take one of your peacocks. So I bought the peacock, brought it back to our ship.
If you ever want to get in touch with your chaotic evil side, play Dungeons & Dragons.
Or your chaotic stupid side.
Oh yeah, well.
There are some players. Anyway, so we brought it back to the ship, and all it did was just...
started screaming in the captain's cabin. So, because this is the era of the cell phone and YouTube, somebody looked up the sound of a peacock's mating call on YouTube. And
It wasn't even a mating call. It's just the sound of a peacock.
Just calling, and it's like a 4-minute video. And I think we've all favorited it at this point for use at various...
For many different reasons.
I have not, because I do not favor it.
Every once in a while, we'll be doing something, and then whatever the sound it may make.
I have favorited goat noises.
Screaming goats.
What noises do goats make when you thuck them?
They scream, and then they make a squish thud.
D&D, a system where you can take a
ogre wielding 5 goats attached to chains around their neck as a +5 flail. After every swing, it went down a number.
It definitely lets your creative muscle flex. I mean,
It not only lets it encourages it. This is the only way to progress through this thing.
Here's some weird shit the GM came up with. What? I don't know. The GM doesn't need drugs.
Or the GM is doing
a lot
of the drugs.
That's Jordan. Mine is, I'm crazy.
So yeah, as we mentioned, this has gone through several iterations. Iterations. That is the word I was looking for. Thank you, sir. We're currently on 5th edition that they're calling D&D Next, I think.
Yeah, we played it.
No, it's just D&D 5.
Well, I think the in development name was
D&D Next.
Yes.
And then they switched it to D&D 5.
Yeah. Most of us are too young to have experienced the horror that was 1st and 2nd edition.
Technically, some of the really old CRPGs that came out back during the 90s were like Baldur's Gate, Eye of the Beholder.
Icewind Dale.
Icewind Dale came after Baldur's Gate. Oh, what was it?
You really want to get nitpicky.
Shadow of the Corned Rat.
Vampire the Masquerade, Redemption, the first game, kind of draws from Baldur's Gate pretty heavily.
I could have swore they used the mechanics in it.
I don't know. What is it? 2nd edition had a Thaco, and that just...
It's 2-hit armor class 0. This is what you need to roll to be able to hit someone with a 0, but you're doing the math completely opposite the way you do the rest of the game.
Again, math.
A large chunk of why this gaming system is stereotyped as favoring nerds and geeks is because it's all math. Somehow it reduces the giant, sweat-glistening, barbarian, illiterate warlord swinging
a couple of plus
great
4s
axe to a bunch of numbers and a random chance on a die.
And amusingly enough, with the number of nerds we have here, we can't remember at what point the numbers increase.
That's what books are for.
13 is a plus. Yes. I'm looking at someone who's always asking me, hey, 17 is a +3, right? Yes.
If we had more copies of the books, I wouldn't have to ask you. I just open a book.
Because I never memorized it.
Yeah.
It's once I get past the like +4 is when I'm like, okay, every 2 it goes up 1.
But anyhow, most of us entered the game at 3.5, just in time to miss the debacle of 3rd edition.
I joined in the 3rd.
Isn't most of us? Just in time to miss the debacle that was Monty Cook.
And the Book of Sword and Fist. It's an entire book designated to prestige classes for monk and fighter, and they all sucked.
More to the point, Monty Cook was a designer that was just coming off Magic the Gathering. And at the time, for trading card games, there was this idea that you'd put cards in the set that were deliberately bad, or at least lower powered, as a trap for inexperienced players. And so they implemented that into the game design for 3rd edition. So there were feats and skills and races that were just bad as traps for inexperienced players, because, of course, we're catering this entire game system to munchkins and min-maxers. That's our target demographic, after all.
Basically, back then, unless you were going specifically for the role-playing perspective, or you deliberately planned on multi-classing, do not touch half-elf with a 10-foot pole. It's a worthless race.
All the more reason to play it, if you ask me.
I played gnomes and dwarves.
We know you play the short guys.
And I enjoy punting the gnome.
Or I'll play something like a Warforged and I will charge through a ship at people.
Then the group will plan on making a catapult that fires you at things.
Yes.
And it's like, technically, you should be taking damage every time I have to do this, but I don't want to do the math right now.
Because as a construct, he takes hardness damage, not hit points.
So he's not a construct.
Living
Forged
construct.
diamonds? Oh, okay.
No, they're counted as living beings. Even though they are constructs.
Yeah. But as you
Cue the hate mail from the Eastern philosophers.
So yeah, there's been different iterations of
Iterations.
of D&D, and as Trav said,
You'll notice his glass is empty.
most of us did start with 3.5. Greg with 3. They came out with a couple more editions. 4th edition.
Fourth edition, or I want to be Warcraft on a tabletop.
Or hey, Pathfinder sounds a whole lot better than this shit.
Well, that's a different episode.
Well, 4th edition though, like when we revisited, well, we didn't revisit, but we re-looked at it. It looked like it was better for minis and actual dungeon crawls, but
it cuts out a lot of the role playing.
4th edition is not bad for what it is. It does what it was intended to do very well. And that's dungeon crawls, that's having your miniatures in front of you so that you have this visual aid. It's a lot of very combat heavy, forget all the rest of it. We're going to cut out the point where the mysterious old man in the tavern wearing a cloak that shadows his
I
face
have a sword, I'm going to
offers
beat
you a
things
job.
up.
You're already in the dungeon, you're going to go slaughter some stuff, and that's all there is to it.
And you also had shitty mechanics like Der Clang.
Der Clang.
It's the nickname for one of the rogue abilities where you move next to the enemy and they have to spend an action attacking you. However, if they fail it, they hit themselves. Der Clang!
Charizard is confused. Charizard hurt itself in its confusion.
What did the trainer say? Hit myself in the face as hard as I can. Alright, time to shine!
Oh wait, this is the big bad boss of the module, and he just slammed himself in the face with a great hammer.
So yeah, 4th edition had some issues.
It can go so.
And then 5th edition came out, but there's a different company put out for all intents and purposes, 3.75, correct?
That's what the early nickname for Pathfinder is.
Pathfinder was 3.75. It is actually 3.75.
It's much more math heavy, though.
It is more math heavy, but in most respects, Pathfinder is better.
It's
But again,
streamlined.
we're gonna talk about that somewhere else. Right now, we are talking about good old Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons, the Dragoning.
That is
40K.
another story altogether. No, we'll get to that, I'm sure, but no. And Ravenloft. Yeah. Dungeons and Dragons can be further broken down into several settings, I guess.
And even those settings can be broken down into subsettings.
But the broader spectrum is that you've got your standard Dungeons and Dragons,
which is GREYHAWK.
GREYHAWK, which is traditional Western high fantasy. It's all about, knights in shining armor rescuing damsels from colorful dragons.
It also depends
evil
which edition you're doing, because they tend to switch which one's the core setting with the edition.
Right. And you've got like Ravenloft, which is their horror setting, which is probably our favorite. We'll probably wind up doing a show on that later. Yourself. Your eyelid is twitching, sir.
Yeah,
you have something to add?
Ravenloft, I have a love-hate relationship. It's cool and all hell. I get burned out of it real fast.
Our group does it quite a bit. I think that's potentially why. Yeah. But we've had some of our best sessions from the Ravenloft set.
I've had some of my best deaths.
That's it. Ravenloft is intended to be largely a horror setting. Most of the main villains and characters you'll encounter in it are very...
gothic.
It's gothic. It's very recognizable.
This is totally not Frankenstein with the serial numbers filed off.
I was going to say Universal Monsters, but that works too.
Well, that was a specific Dark Lord.
Yeah, Strahd is Dracula. You've got...
I can't remember his name.
Adam is the Frankenstein monster.
Schloss Mordenheim. Victor Mordenheim for...
Victor Mordenheim is...
Lamortia.
And so on down the line. There's one with the Phantom of the Opera. There's one with the Creature from the Black Lagoon. There's... The Mummy is in there somewhere.
Those are very minor settings.
Yeah.
Touch on.
Darkon's a lich.
Yeah, and then there's some other stuff like...
Here's Vlad the Impaler.
Yep. Or Lord Soth from...
He's no longer the Dark Lord anymore because...
Oh, no, he was for a long time, so he's worth mentioning. So, yeah, if you're familiar with those novels, that's a thing.
That was its own legal issue with that.
Yeah. And there's one domain that's very much dedicated to the Wolfman, or, as in clumsy D&D parlance, the Wolf Wares. So you get that very horror feel. Then you get Spelljammer. Elves in space!
Miniature giant space hamsters that are intelligent, theoretically. Boo?
Right. Actually, that's something that you were mentioning earlier, is that D&D actually paved the way for Western RPGs.
Yeah, when you look back in 1997, Baldur's Gate came out. It was a second edition D&D game. And it just revitalized what Western RPGs were at that point, because you had stuff like Eye of the Beholder.
That's where the beauty is.
Ultima. And they were a dying genre. Baldur's Gate came out, and they're like, holy shit, you can actually do a D&D style RPG. We have an alternative to JRPGs. And it kind of just, that's what I think about then, is when like the Elder Scrolls series started really picking off.
So, in short, you can thank Dungeons & Dragons nerds for the fact that you have Skyrim to bum around in these days.
And Fallout.
Yeah.
Even though that's based on GURPS.
And even to a lesser extent, things like Grand Theft Auto. Yeah. Less fantasy, but, you know. So, yeah, as we were saying, Spelljammer, which is exactly, as I said, it's your Dungeons & Dragons races on spaceships.
I would say it's less elves in space, it's more Farscape, the D&D game.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Or, you know, elements of Serenity, or...
Totally not Star Wars and Star Trek.
Absolutely not. No. And then they have their third setting that none of us have really touched, Dark Sun, which is very post-apocalyptic, or they describe it as like Doom.
Doom.
Yeah, Doom.
Basically, mages destroyed the world.
Imagine that.
And then one of their core ones is the Forgotten Realms, which alternates between being their primary, secondary setting, or being the primary setting, depending on whether or not they're going to write for GREYHAWK.
Or as I like to call it, hundreds and hundreds of books about Drizzt.
Only a couple of series, and he's a shitty character.
Eberron was a setting too.
Eberron was a setting, yeah. Or my personal favorite, High Point, better known to most people as Dragon Mech, where they...
yeah, I love Dragon Mech. From what little bit I played of it.
Gonna blow those fucking robots up.
Dragon Mech actually started as a drunken bet between two game designers that they couldn't find a way to fit, like, mechs, like Gundams, into Dungeons & Dragons. And Oh, they did.
This is also why we have Cthulhu Tech now.
But that's another conversation for another time.
It's its own beast and not a good one.
No, it isn't. What else to be said? I mean,
at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of people getting around a table, telling a story, rolling some dice, having a good time.
And there are those them trying to kill everyone.
And you bring the Mountain Dew, I'll bring the Funyuns.
And there are those out there who
Cheetos.
I don't think it's really prevalent nowadays, but like when I first heard of Dungeons and Dragons, at the very beginning, when I said it's Satan's game, it's like
shit.
Everyone really thought like this was something satanic, and
it has to do with the 80s with the satanic panic going on, and they even thought metal music was
yeah.
Judas Priest is telling kids to kill themselves. No, the song was just called "Do It."
Yeah. Other things you can thank Dungeons & Dragons for. Have you ever played The Legend of Zelda? Enjoyed that little Nintendo gem? The first Legend of Zelda game was actually intended as a D&D emulator.
Or Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy. The entire Final Fantasy franchise.
The original Final Fantasy in particular.
Yep.
If you like the classes.
Yeah, if you like riding around on chocobos, thank Dungeons & Dragons for that.
I say chocobo, but it is chocobo. But I don't care.
Way down in Chocobo.
Yeah. That's good.
I know what I said about launching RPGs. It revitalized the West. It gave inspiration for the East.
Really did. And
if you like, what was the anime? Record of the Lotus one.
Yes,
It was basically they made their D&D campaign into an anime.
Dragon Warrior, very loosely Minecraft.
Very loosely, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what else can we really say? It's storytelling at its finest, and
it is the oldest human pastime. Getting together with a group of like-minded individuals and telling a story. And in this one, they're your stories. Go out and enjoy them. Unless you like pre-mates, in which case they're somebody else's story. But they're just as enjoyable.
And if you have any D&D stories or any tabletop stories in general, we would love to hear them.
Tell us your favorite character. Tell us your favorite character death. Tell us something brilliantly demented that your GM did.
Exactly. Yeah. We would love to hear that. Leave it in the comments.
Give me ideas.
Let's not give Greg ideas. But that'll probably happen anyways.
All right.
Oh, I go and watch a TV show and I get 5 ideas.
And with that, have a good night.
Good night. I'm Vigo. This is Spoonie, and that's Thrift, and we are out.